Over the past 30 years, computers have revolutionized our lives. They affect all of us, some for the worse, but mostly for the better. Almost a year ago, my laptop changed my life for the worse. I was stuck in Salt Lake City for a week-long meeting. It was my first evening away from home, and as usual, I called home. And what happened? I ended up watching a live XX show on my computer. Despite her advanced age, the woman on my little 14-inch screen had all the right curves in all the right places. She and her partner engaged in various love games and more, just as expected in such shows. I'd had enough. I exited the program and shut down the computer. I wasn't intrigued at all by what I'd just witnessed. In fact, I was disgusted. Welcome to the Dark Side channel. Dive into the world of human relationships, mistakes, and right decisions. Don't miss out. Subscribe and join our growing community. The woman on the screen, the one participating in the actions, was none other than my lovely wife, Martha. And this was all happening in our home in Sacramento. Martha is a beautiful 47-year-old woman. After nearly 25 years of marriage and 2 grown children, she is still a very sensual woman with all the curves. I, Bob McLeod, a 49-year-old architect, have been a loving husband for 25 years, and now I am a cuckold. I had known for some time that something was off between Martha and me. She was distant, often distracted when alone with me, barely listened to me, and our lovemaking was at best sporadic. I grew suspicious of her new habit of working late and on weekends. So, as my trip approached, it became clear that I needed to find a way to keep an eye on her while I was away. It wasn't very difficult, just expensive. I had several motion-activated cameras installed around the house under the guise of a new security system. I could monitor each camera from anywhere in the world. In a way, I'm glad I discovered her infidelity that evening. After a few minutes of self-pity, my anger took over. With no outlet for it, this anger simply spiked my blood pressure to a new high, and the next thing I knew, I collapsed. I knew something was wrong, very wrong. I had time to call 911, give them my room number at the Hilton, and then I blacked out. I woke up later that night in the ICU. Long story short, a few days later, after numerous tests, I learned that I was suffering from an advanced stage of endocarditis. Most of my heart valves were severely damaged. In just a few days, I found out twice that my heart was broken. Figuratively speaking, I was heartbroken when I discovered that my 25-year marriage was over, and that my loving wife was nothing but a cheater and a liar. I was also literally heartbroken when I learned that without a heart transplant, I had very little time left to live, at most a year. Under any other circumstances, I'm almost sure I would have chosen the long and slow path of exiting my marriage with Martha. But now I had no time to waste. Completely alone, bedridden in an unfamiliar city hospital, all I could do was plan the next few months, my last few months. Yes, I'm a cruel loser, and it's true that I mostly plan to get back at my wife and her lover, so sue me. I'm sure I won't be there if it comes to that. Only my aversion to firearms kept me from flying home and shooting up the crime scene. That, and the fact that I couldn't fly. I had to endure a long ambulance ride all the way home. My brother Steve was very surprised when an ambulance pulled up to his house in Elk Grove, California. I was not going home, and I didn't want to impose on my kids. That left my twin brother Steve. When strangers or mere acquaintances look at us, they can't tell us apart. But all close friends and family can see the difference. One of the big differences is that I have only one kidney, just like Steve. But I have the right kidney, and he has the left one. My kidney. You see, in his early 20s, Steve traveled a lot. He didn't know he had a severe infection. He let it undermine his health for months, and by the time the doctors figured it out, he was near death from kidney failure. After several tests and surgery, he was back on his feet with one of my kidneys. So it's no wonder I turned to him in my time of need. I didn't need to ring the bell. As the medic wheeled me toward the house, company policy, as I could walk on my own, the front door opened, and out came Steve. "Bob, what the hell is going on? What does all this mean? An ambulance and a wheelchair?" "Well, Steve, I'm glad to see you too," I said, getting out of the wheelchair. I turned to the medic to shake his hand. "Thanks, buddy. Want a cup of coffee before heading back to Salt Lake City?" No, thanks. My wives are waiting for me, and I don't want to give them too many reasons to complain. One wife complaining is one thing, 3 is quite another, the medic said. I'll be on my way. Take care. Poor guy. I watched him as he slowly walked to the ambulance, as if the weight of the world was on his shoulders. I walked past Steve and into the house, my younger brother following close behind, just like 49 years ago when he followed me about an hour later, turning my mom's ordeal into a nightmare. Now it's clear why my mom loved me the most. I went to the fridge, grabbed 2 beers and sat at the table, offering one to Steve. He waited a bit before asking me again what was going on with me. Well, I'm in deep trouble. I guess there's no better way to say it. First, my heart is like Swiss cheese, and it doesn't have many miles left. The doctors said I have less than a year to live. Upon hearing this, my brother jumped out of his chair, shocked with a look of pain on his face. Oh, Bob, that's terrible. Can't they do the same thing they did for me? A transplant? Well, I'm on the recipient list, but the doctor said my chances are slim. Remember, we have rare blood? Add to that my age and the fact that I'm operating on only 1 kidney, and I'm not very high on the priority list. That sucks, my brother said, leaning back in his chair. How is Martha handling the news? I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at him, giving him time to connect the dots. He looked at me as he realized that Martha probably didn't know. Oh my God! She doesn't know, does she? You came here straight from Salt Lake, my brother concluded. What's going on, Bob? Why didn't you go home? Steve, I found out I had a bad heart after I had a heart attack in Salt Lake City, I told him. And I had the heart attack after discovering that Martha was cheating on me. It nearly killed me. And how did you find out she was cheating? Steve asked. It doesn't matter how, I replied. I only have a few months to live, and I don't want to make it more painful. That bitch has taken enough of my life. I'm not even divorcing her. What are you going to do? Steve asked. First, I'm going to get my hands on as much cash as I can. I'm really going to enjoy these next few months. Second, I'm changing my will and life insurance. That bitch isn't getting a dime from my death. Everything goes to the kids. A thought suddenly struck me. Were they even my kids? How long had she been cheating on me? What? Steve asked, noticing my silence. How messed up is this? I don't even know if they're my kids. I need to get some DNA tests done. Stop. Don't go there, brother, Steve said soothingly. If you've got only a few months left, you don't need your heart broken again. Don't wake a sleeping dog. You're right. Anyway, I'm completely exhausted. I need to lie down, but not a word to Martha while I'm asleep. I've only got a few months left, and I need my brother, I said. Steve came over and hugged me. Taking everything to heart. The next morning, Steve took the day off. He became my chauffeur for the entire day. Our first stop was the bank. I withdrew everything I could from our savings and cashed out everything we had in our safe deposit box. The total amounted to about $150,000. Next, I went to my employer, gave them all the necessary papers from my doctor, and resigned on the spot due to medical reasons. I could swear I saw a tear form in my tough boss's eye. Within an hour, I had a check for all my accrued vacation time, my unpaid salary, and my 401k. By lunchtime, I had more than $500,000 in cash and checks, and the checks would be cashed as soon as possible. Right after lunch, I had an appointment with a lawyer. Steve was eager to know exactly what I was planning to do. I asked him to trust me and promised that by the end of the day, he would know everything. When we arrived, my lawyer had everything ready. I signed several documents, leaving everything I still had that I couldn't cash out to my kids, with Steve signing as a witness. This included a country cottage I inherited from our parents, my car, my boat, and a few other toys. Then I signed a power of attorney to Martha, giving her the rights to the entire amount she could get from selling our family home. We had about $250,000 in equity, and that was to be her share of our assets. I gave the lawyer a letter to deliver to Martha when he met her the next day. Dear wife, you stabbed me in the back. I would never have believed the day would come when I'd call you a damn cheater. That's the only name I can use since I found out you betrayed me, stabbed me in the back, and cheated on me. I loved you and really thought you loved me. Now I know the truth. You'll get the power of attorney giving you the right to sell the house. I've withdrawn everything else from our bank accounts. The house is your share of our life together. I'm not a thief and everything is split evenly. I'm not even divorcing you. I'll just be glad to never see you again. I just hope you die a painful death soon. Go to hell. Bob Steve read over my shoulder as I wrote the letter. Well, I see you're grown up enough not to let your pain dictate you, brother, Steve said, a sparkle in his eyes. Dad always said never to let emotions rule your life, I replied. Then I stopped by my insurance agent to change the beneficiary on my life insurance. The benefit would be split between my 2 kids. I didn't tell the poor guy that there was a good chance his company would soon be paying out my policy. By the end of the day, I was exhausted again. Steve drove me back to his place since I really needed to rest. The next day, I woke up early and watched my brother leave for work. He offered to take another day off, but I insisted he not change his routine too much. Once he left, I went back to my room, packed my things, and called a cab. Within 2 hours, I was on a flight to Acapulco. I knew that Steve or the kids wouldn't be able to keep the secret from Martha for long, and I was determined to spend the next few months away from that woman. I needed to enjoy life as much as possible, and getting away from my wife was a great start. I rented a villa and hired a cook housekeeper. She was very helpful, and she was nice too. I also contacted a world-renowned Mexican cardiologist. 2 weeks later, I called my kids and brother to let them know where I was. For my brother, this was in addition to the note I left him, explaining that I had to leave the country but would call soon. "Damn it, Bob. Why did you leave like that?" my brother asked. "And guess who your wife came to for comfort? Damn." "It's okay, Steve. I know you can play the attentive guy," I said. "Anyway, I'm calling to let you know I'm living in Mexico and loving it. The kids are coming to visit me next week, but they promised to keep it from their mom. What about you? Can you come after that?" "Deal," my brother replied. "I'll take some vacation time. Where are you?" "Just get a flight to Acapulco. Give me the flight number and someone will pick you up," I said. "You don't trust me to keep a secret, brother? This sounds like cloak and dagger." "I didn't even tell the kids. I don't want to risk it. His heart in the right place." I met Steve at the airport. We grabbed his bags and headed to the waiting limousine. Our destination was a good hour's drive from Acapulco, practically in the countryside. As we approached Villa del Corazon, Steve was impressed. "Holy shit, Bob. Is this the villa you rented?" "No, it's an annex to my doctor's medical center. Sorry about that, but I had a pre-scheduled appointment here on the day you arrived," I said. "Come with me. The limo driver will take your luggage to my place while we wait for the doctor who's going to check me." We went inside, and a nurse led us to a waiting room. We were the only clients there. Soon after she left, an orderly came in and offered us a drink. We both took a glass of fresh juice. "Cheers," I said, raising my glass towards my brother. "Cheers!" In one swift motion, I downed my glass of juice, and Steve followed suit. "What's the deal with this doctor?" my brother asked. "Does he have some miraculous cure that no one knows about in the U.S.? "No, but he's a renowned heart transplant surgeon." "Oh, so I guess he's very good." "Well, I don't know if he's good. I chose him because he has a rather flexible sense of ethics," I said. Steve looked at me curiously. "I don't understand. Flexible ethics? What do you mean?" "Well, for a good price, he doesn't care where the organ comes from, and for an additional fee, he gets it himself." Steve looked at me in shock. "You're not serious, Bob," he began. I'm not feeling so well. I'm dizzy." I stood up and walked over to my brother. I took his hand. "Steve, you're my brother, and I'd do anything for you," I said, hoping to tell him everything before he lost consciousness. "In fact, I already gave you one of my kidneys. And how did you repay me? By sleeping with my wife. You betrayed the man who saved your life, your own brother. For that, I want my kidney back, and while we're at it, I'll take your heart too. Time to pay up, brother. Our dad always said we both had our hearts in the right place. That'll be true for you pretty soon." I wasn't sure if he heard my final tirade. I rang the bell, and the orderlies returned to the room to prepare us. Many weeks after post-operative recovery, I left Mexico and returned to California. I was still too weak to work, so I asked my kids to let me live in the cottage. Most of my money was gone, but I had enough left to live for a few more months without working. Due to my condition, I couldn't get any unemployment benefits or medical insurance. Steve's disappearance didn't go unnoticed. In fact, it was my dear wife who brought it to light. As soon as I arrived, the kids informed me that everyone was looking for their Uncle Steve and that their mother had contacted the police. The following week, a police detective came to the cottage and asked if I had any information on Steve's whereabouts. I told him that the last time I saw him was in Mexico, and he was alive and well, but I hadn't heard from him since. The inspector, of course, smelled something fishy, but whatever it was in another country, and there wasn't much he could do. He showed up a few more times, just to see if I would crack and confess, but then his visits stopped. I knew the day would come when I'd have to face my wife. It was a warm summer day, and I was working at the cottage shirtless, painting the old shed. I didn't hear her approach. "So this is where you've been hiding?"
"No, I'm not hiding," I said without turning around, continuing to paint the wall. "Everyone who matters in my life, my 2 kids, knows where to find me." "And what about me? Don't I count?" Martha asked. "Not anymore," was my simple response. She sat silently for a while. "I never got a chance to tell you how sorry I am, Bob," she said very meekly. I realized she wouldn't leave unless I forced her out. I put the brush back into the paint can and turned around. Her eyes widened in shock as she saw the very red T-shaped scar on my chest, a reminder of my heart transplant. "Look, if it makes you feel any better, just say your piece and then get the hell out of here. You need to understand that I don't care about you anymore, one way or the other." I could see tears streaming down her face, but I also noticed that it left me without any emotion whatsoever. No anger, no pity, absolutely nothing. "What's that?" she asked, pointing a finger at my chest. My irritation grew. "Just a scar. I needed a heart transplant and I got one." "Oh," was all she could say. "Have the police been asking about Steve?" "Yes. And what did you tell them?" "The truth. That I have no idea where he is, but that a part of him will always be with me, right here." I tapped my chest, where my new heart resided. I turned to grab a t-shirt. That was a mistake, as it gave Martha a clear view of the scar from my recently reopened left kidney. "What's that scar from a kidney surgery?" she asked. I was annoyed and made another mistake. "Yeah, and I got my old kidney back," I said. It took a moment for Martha to process. I watched as her face went pale. Then she turned and ran away without even saying goodbye. Good thing I didn't offer her one of my last beers. Shortly after, I received divorce papers, signed them, sent them back, and never saw her again. For those wondering, the DNA tests confirmed that my kids are indeed mine. Thank you for watching. We have prepared a second story for you. Enjoy watching. Ah, the joys of sleep. That's what allowed me to handcuff my wife's hand to our custom-made ashwood headboard. She didn't wake up right away. She slowly opened her eyes, then screamed. Her scream woke up her lover, Bob Simmons, who quickly discovered that his wrist was also in handcuffs. Bob's scream was a bit more manly as he fell off the bed. He scrambled back onto the bed, and the words he intended to say got stuck in his throat. "I suppose waking up to find your wife's husband standing at the foot of the bed with a revolver aimed at you will do that." "You guys sleep well?" I asked. "Oh my God, Jerry, this isn't what it looks like," my wife sobbed. "Well, let's figure out what it looks like," I said. "You're lying in our marital bed, trying to convince me you're a faithful little wife?" "Don't be foolish," Bob croaked. "Don't go to jail because of her." His eyes were still fixed on the .35 Magnum in my hands. It made sense, as I was trembling with a mix of rage and sorrow. "And here's the man you decided to leave me for. If you were still my wife, I'd have to defend your honor. But since it doesn't seem like that'll matter any time soon, I really couldn't care less." "It's interesting that he still holds you in such high regard," I replied. Barb ignored both of our comments. "Jerry, please put it down and let's talk about this. This head isn't worth going to jail for," she pleaded. "Wow, I guess this relationship really blossomed, huh?
He insults you and you insult him. I thought you'd treat him with more respect. After all, he's the one you thought was worth breaking us up for, I said sadly. Jerry, we're not breaking up. I messed up big time, but we can work through this. I'll fix everything, I promise, she sobbed. How are you going to do that? Are you going to turn back time? Because that's the only way I can see us having anything in common in the future. I loved you so much that my life would be hell if that happened. I don't want to go back to that place again, but if the alternative is living with an unfaithful wife, what options do I have? I asked. I pressed it against my temple. Maybe it would be easiest to just pull the trigger like this. I'd end the pain and you'd be free to choose whoever and however you want. You might feel some guilt, but I'm pretty sure you'd eventually forget about me, she said. Jerry, no! She screamed. Do it! He yelled. I slowly lowered the revolver. An idea struck me. I opened the revolver's cylinder and pressed the ejector to release 6 cartridges. They clattered to the floor, and I picked one up. I heard grumbling as the bastard tried and failed to break free from the headboard he was attached to. What a loser. He quieted down as I picked up the lone cartridge. Horror flashed across Barb's face. This is a cartridge! When the bullet leaves the barrel of this revolver, it travels at a speed of 1,500 feet per second. When it hits something solid, it flattens and nearly triples the area of impact it can damage. I inserted the cartridge into the cylinder. Barb, you know how much I loved gambling before I met you. It nearly ruined us in the first few years of our marriage. I stopped for you. Don't get me wrong, I benefited from stopping. But I had the strength to quit only because I loved you so much, I said sadly. I tilted the revolver back slightly and spun the cylinder. As it still spun, I snapped my wrist and inserted the cylinder back into the revolver. Since I really don't know what to do, I'll leave it up to chance. A twist of fate, if you will, I said. I slowly aimed the revolver at her lover. Since Bob is our esteemed guest, I feel I should start with him. Would you like me to leave a note for your wife or daughters, Bob? I asked. It'll be quite lonely at 726 Maple Lane when they ultimately find you with this bullet in you. Your wife Allison and your twin daughters Zoe and Chloe will be devastated enough when they see the package my investigator sends them. I considered sending some less revealing photos, but I decided your girls needed to know exactly what you were up to late nights at the office. I also took the liberty of including photos of 2 other women you've been seeing just so she gets the full picture. I didn't think he could go any paler, but when I aimed the revolver at him, he did. I cocked the hammer back. He closed his eyes. I pulled the trigger. Click. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. I thought he might faint, but he came to. Of course, the sheet around him started to yellow as he wet himself. You survived this round. Maybe you'll still get to see your pretty daughters, I said calmly. I aimed the revolver at my wife. What about you, Barb? Ready to meet your maker? You went to church last Sunday, so I assume you confessed your sins. If you were to die today without the chance to confess, would you go to heaven or to hell? Unless things have changed, adultery is still considered a sin in your religion, I asked her. Yes, she whispered with closed eyes. I'm sorry, what did you say? I asked her. Yes, Jerry, adultery is a sin. It's a sin against your spouse, and it's a sin against God. I've never admitted to what I've done. If this bullet hits me, I'll go to hell, she said. Well, let's see if your God wants you to live, I replied, cocking the hammer back. I pulled the trigger. Click! The hammer fell on an empty chamber. She sobbed as I aimed the revolver at myself again. I was in such a dark place before you came into my life, Barb, I told her. The only time I ever felt remotely okay was when I was on that winning streak. It was never about the money. It was all about the thrill. I remember thinking about how kind and gentle you were as you tended to my hands that night in the ER. Gino's goons really did a number on me. I told myself that if I had a caring woman like you in my life, I wouldn't need to gamble. Did I ever tell you that it was the memory of your hands, bandaging mine, that made me stop? That night I settled things with Gino, and I haven't gambled since. I know life without you would be hell. You're my rock. If this bullet hits me, my suffering will end. You won't be able to hurt me anymore. I almost want it to happen, I said softly to her. She sobbed again as I pulled the trigger once more. Click. The hammer fell on an empty chamber. My wife screamed. Damn it!
Bob cursed. I aimed the revolver at her lover. As these might be your last moments on Earth, Bob, please tell me why you hunt for married women. I really don't understand it. Your wife is attractive, and your daughters seem charming. Why? I asked. Please, man, don't kill me, he pleaded. I shrugged and cocked the hammer back with my thumb. He suddenly broke down in tears. It's all about the chase, finding what turns them on, and then playing them. Your wife was a little discontented with you. In any marriage, even a good one, there are rough patches and mutual grievances. All I had to do was accentuate how helpful and beautiful she was, and she wanted me. Anyway, it was supposed to be the last time. Once I sleep with another man's wife in their bed, the game is over and I win, he sobbed. This guy seemed to have some issues. He looked pretty pathetic. I should have taken a picture, but I didn't want any incriminating evidence. I heard him groan as he tried to break the bed headboard again. I looked him in the eye. I pulled the trigger. Click! The hammer fell on an empty chamber. He passed out. I aimed it at my wife. All right, it's either you or me. Kinda bummed the lover dodged the bullet. I love you, Barb. Almost hope it's not you. It'd be cleaner if I came home, found you two in bed, couldn't take it, and ended it all. You'd be alive. I wouldn't have to deal with murder. All this pain would be gone, and you'd be free to be with whoever the hell you want, I said to her sadly. She tried to stay calm, but we were both hanging by a thread. Jerry, please stop this. You've made your point. Bob passed out from fear. You've won. Lower the gun, and we can convince Bob not to press charges. You haven't done anything irreversible. I want to stay with you, but if you lower the gun, I promise to sign any divorce papers you present. If I can convince you to stay, I'll spend every day making up for my sins. Please don't do this, Jerry, she pleaded. Barb, I don't think I'm Jerry anymore. When I found out what you were doing, I was so angry, and then to find out you did it in our bed, well, something inside me died. I think right now I'm just a finger of fate. Let's see if your time has come, I said. I pulled the hammer back with my thumb. I pulled the trigger. Click! The hammer fell on an empty chamber. Barb started sobbing as I aimed the revolver at my own head. It seems fate has decided. I love you, Barb. I'm sorry it had to come to this. I hope you find happiness, I said, slowly squeezing the trigger. Jerry, please don't, she screamed, trying to break the headboard she was handcuffed to. I'll leave Oregon, I'll stay, and you can do whatever you want. Please don't do this. Oh, God, help, somebody help, she cried out. It's for the best, Barb. I love you, I said sadly. I closed my eyes. I pulled the trigger.
Note, I really wanted to end the story here. Given the event, I tried to do it where the poor guy was so upset he just wanted to end it. However, I think both my readers would be disappointed. So I leave it up to you. Scroll for an epilogue or leave it here and ponder what happened. Click! The hammer fell on an empty chamber. I guess I should explain. You see, as a player, I'm pretty good with my fingers. Gino messed up my left hand, but my right was still pretty good. Card tricks, chip shuffling, and coin tossing. All that stuff develops your dexterity. So pulling a bullet out of a revolver isn't that tough, especially when your audience is fixated on the barrel. Tilting the revolver back to spin the cylinder gave me enough cover to palm the bullet. After that, it was all a show. Why? Because I wanted them to feel fear and pain, but I wasn't ready to go hard on these morons. Back to our story. I laughed so hard seeing the expression on my wife's face. Did you really think I was going to end up in jail because of you two? Ha! I almost choked trying to catch my breath. Still laughing, I leaned down and picked up all 6 bullets from the floor. This time I loaded the revolver for real. No point in risking it. I tossed the handcuff key to my wife. She was sobbing and seemed to be struggling to breathe. Dumbass Bob was coming too. Barb was still sobbing and didn't make any move to take the key. I noticed Bob eyeing the key, but looking at me, contemplating what to do. Take the key, dumbass, get your clothes, and get the hell out of here, I told him. Consider it a vivid lesson, Bob. Would I actually do it? Damn no. But hopefully Bob thought I was serious, or else I could have ended up in prison for more than a few years. When all was said and done, Bob didn't utter a word about what happened. Barb was subdued, but she signed the divorce papers without any complaints. It helped that it was a pretty fair deal money-wise.
The only thing I asked for was my grandma's engagement ring, and for her to take back her maiden name. She moved to Grand Rapids and sends me birthday wishes on social media. Doesn't seem like she's dating, but I don't check her social media page. I wasn't joking when I said I loved her. I still sometimes get angry about what she did to me, but I'm moving on. The good days outnumber the bad now, and I've even had a few friends with benefits. Bob got divorced, and the last I heard of him is that he's living in a crappy one-bedroom apartment, paying spousal and child support that nearly broke him. I sent him one instant message before he blocked me. I wrote to him that if he wanted to end it all, he could borrow my gun.